a warm welcome to Imbokodo Women's Roundtable. I'm Flo Ledwaba, and as we celebrate Women's Month in August, we are having conversations with women of influence in different fields, thought-provoking, eye-opening conversations on the struggles of women on the continued quest, of course, for equality. We're talking about experiences of women in the fields of arts, sports, as well as broadcast. These are male-dominated fields, typically aggressive and unkind, and more so, I would say, to women. But it's also a place where we're talking about women's achievements. We're not saying, woe is me. We're also looking at what we've done, the inroads, and how we've gotten to where we have in these different sectors. All right, let me introduce you to my guests then on this round table. I have Ria Ledwaba, who is CEO, multi-business and sports award winner, founder of Ria Stars Football Club, which played in PSL, of course. And I understand a soon-to-be author as we await the release of Not Without a Struggle. We also have Lebo Motswedi, who's an award-winning television presenter, scriptwriter, producer, and a leading woman in sports broadcasting. She's currently on the Boxing South Africa's Women in Boxing Committee. Lynette Francis, who's a narrator, news anchor, broadcaster, host of Afrikaans flagship current affairs show Focus, as well as a radio talk show host. And we have Michelle Bradshaw, who's a performer, international actress, voiceover artist, graduate in the field of drama. And Khuthazo KG Monjani, who is a multiple award-winning tennis star, sensation, the first black South African woman to ever play at Wimbledon Championship. She's played in the Paralympics, Rio 2016, London 2012, as well as Beijing 2008. Ladies, thank you so very much for gracing us with your presence. We appreciate your time, and I can't wait to have this conversation and unpack all of our struggles, but also all of our achievements. Thanks so much. All right, let's start off the conversation by talking about, the importance of representation in these fields that we are in, male-dominated fields, I must say. How, we are given a seat at this table. We're often given a seat on this table, but then that seat is actually quite wobbly once you're sitting, on that seat you're given. But it's also problematic in that it seems as though we're being done a certain favor. Ria, your experiences, when you look back, you entered a very male-dominated field. You decided to go into soccer, where I think you are, I would say, the only woman that's recognizable in South African football till this time. What would you say have been your experiences, from the start, where you have seen that, some of these struggles aren't necessarily because I'm not worthy or I shouldn't be at this table, but it really is about the fact that I'm a woman at this table?
I think the understanding of the structure of your organization, I think it's key. I think a lot of women go into the board without actually understanding the structure. In football, you should understand the constitution. You should know your constitution. When you get there, you know exactly what to say, when to say it, and how to say it. And it is important what you say, that it's just not about the seat on the table. It has to be the value that you are adding into that particular board. And you have to be also be able to understand the debate on that particular day, because you go into a board, there is an agenda of what you need to talk about. So my experience is that you find that a lot, not only women, a lot of people go into the board, they haven't read the documents, they come there. How then are you able to participate productively and add value into the debate of that day? So it is important that as women, as we are few in those boards, we are able to contribute, so that the next time you are not the only one. There are other women that are coming before you.
I also want to talk about the difficulty, though. You raise this topic of bringing other women with you. Is there difficulty in that respect? I just said to you, you're probably the most recognizable woman in football. But we continue to see, young men being groomed and being brought up into into the ranks. Is there a pushback when it comes to entering, you know, the football fraternity? And this is perhaps where it started for you, that level of difficulty.
Of course, first you are in a male-dominated industry. When you get there, there are only men. You are the only woman there. You get frustrated. You get scared, you know, to even raise your voice. So it is important for me. I learned to understand my organization first, and maybe we are a different type of breed, where when you get into an organization, you want to contribute, you want to add value, you want to say things that you don't like that are said in that board. And those are some of the difficulties, because as a woman, when you stand up, men start saying, but you know, is she even allowed to be in this board? You know? So those are the difficulties. Even women saying, what is she doing in a men's sport? You know, so you need that kind of hard courage to be able to go there and be able to really participate.
Lebo, let's bring you in while we're talking about the experiences in the industry. And I think for you, it's when we're talking about arts, sports, and broadcast, it's all three for you. So you've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of all three sectors. And I think it's important, particularly in your case, to talk about those opportunity gaps. You know, where it seems as though, yes, you will be there, you will get that seat on the table I'm talking about, but then you're also given the sort of scraps, what the men don't want to do, what the men would not like to do. You know, it's always as though, look, we've got this woman here. What do you mean we don't have representation? But when you look at the big sort of games, or you look at the big, it's usually the men. And I want to talk to that. I mean, you have now grown, I mean, we've grown in the same way in this industry. And it's remarkable how even now it seems as though you still have to approve something.
It's crazy that you still need to almost prove yourself after 20 years as a sports broadcaster. You go to school, you've got your undergraduate, you've got your postgraduate, and you are still pitted against people that have no educational experience. So you go and you still want to better yourself against your male counterparts, but you still will not be given the Kaizer Chiefs and Paris game. But you'll be given a women's game. Mind you, it's all played in the same amount of time, same rules, same referees. There's absolutely no difference. But you will not do a Chiefs and Paris game because you're a woman. And I don't know what that means, because actually the other teams are easier to get information in terms of research. But if you do a women's game, because they are nowhere to be seen, you have to actually call the coaches and all sorts of people to get information. So those gaps are there, where you're saying, okay, I can do a man and a women's game, right, as much, but let me better myself then. But you better yourself, and it kind of works against you at the end, because it's like, you think you're better now.
And that's the thing, because it's such a difficult balance. It's such a
so how do you balance? But I am better because I'm a little bit educated, but I have my coaching license. I'm not allowed to.
Too arrogant.
I'm making people uncomfortable, but hello, I am a coach. I am a C-licensed CAF coach. I can coach a PSL team. But where am I? I'm nowhere close to the sidelines because I'm a woman.
Of course. Lynette, you took over a flagship Afrikaans talk show, and which, I mean, for many years had been hosted by a man. And I mean, you know, I think even with all your experience, given that, and I was around during that time when you were taking over Fokus, but there were still sort of questions. You know, is she ready? What do you mean? What do you mean? Why is there always a sense that you know, when it comes to women, there has to be a question about, you know, are you ready?
Your readiness.
In terms of what, and how is that defined?
And how is that measured?
How exactly?
And what are you comparing me to?
Exactly. How did you find that process?
What was interesting was the fact that it was a double whammy, because I also took over the radio show that the presenter, that Craig Robinson presented. So you had me on radio, and you had me on Fokus. And I swear to you, I have that email to this day where a listener, and who happens to be a viewer as well, wrote to the station manager at that time saying, why is she allowed to do all these things? So my reply was to the male, would he or she have asked the same question if it was a man? It doesn't come into play. And even though you know you've got all this experience, you constantly have to prove yourself because you are judged every time. And I don't want to create the impression that men are our competition. We enter environments where it's set up, and you either fit into that narrative or you literally take a detour and say, you know what, I'm going to be judged on what I have, what I do, and if you don't like it, we're going to... And over time, I presented the show, and I've been with Focus for 13 years, and over time, and the audiences are predominantly male, but they're not used to a woman confronting them, questioning them, saying, motivate, why do you say that? They label you, and this was very much as aggressive. You know that. They say you're aggressive, you do not know your place.
You're too emotional.
You are very emotional. So you know what? You learn to navigate over time.
You know, I want to continue on this issue of representation, but also just this need to constantly having to prove ourselves as women, Michelle. You know, you're an actress, and I think that for the most part, men, your male viewers, are very happy to have, you know, beautiful women on screen, you know, as a talking head. But we know that behind the scenes, we know who controls the game. We know, you know, who's in charge. And, you know, I understand now, you know, you're going into, you know, going behind the scenes and getting more, you know, pushing to those barriers into going into the back of the scene where the men are most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, there are a few levels of that. So as an actress, I think there is a lot of representation of women, and I'll just start with the front of camera stuff. For me, what the problem is often is it lies in the writing. It's the stereotypes that we are playing. It's the sexualization of women that has been a concern, and then later in my career, the ageism. You know. So, which is actually why I'm going behind the camera. So that is a direct kind of pushback, you know, where there's ageism amongst women, but not necessarily amongst men. You know, we know this, and this is a challenge. This is a
they
real
become
challenge.
more distinguished,
That's
more
it. You know,
experienced.
That's it. And they've got gravitas. You know, so just as you've actually got something to contribute, you've got the gravitas, you've got the experience, you've got hopefully a little wisdom.
Now you're too old.
You're pushed out. You know.
We need a younger face.
That's it. And I mean, it's not 100% across the board. Of course, there's examples where that isn't the case, but it certainly is predominant. But I think the concern is that, so I know, it was an article that I read. There was a slate of 55 movies that were made. Of those 55 movies, 49 of them were directed by men. 49. 3 DOPs were women. 3. So, of course, it does beg the question, are women trying to enter the field? Because, I mean, we can't just go that it's male-dominated and, you know, we've all been pushed out of the industry. I mean, there are other, you know, sections to that we have to consider. But traditionally, it's long hours, it's heavy work, there's, you know, and I think that there is gender bias, and I think that there's a reluctance of investors to go with women, because women, you know, we don't understand technology, or we can't pick up heavy cameras, or, you know, or we're mothers, we should be at home with our children, you know, we can't be working till 4 or 5 in the morning.
Let's move to you, KG. I want to bring you in here. We're talking about this need to prove oneself all the time, and I look at this list of, you know, accolades and achievements, and I look at your counterparts, you know, male athletes that are living with disabilities who, you know, they seem to get more opportunities, they seem to get more sponsors, they seem to get more screen time. And yes, you're a household name, but there seems to be not... There isn't an equilibrium when it comes to your treatment. And I wonder if you've noted that and taken account of that.
You know, honestly, for me, I think I sort of surpassed this thing of male, female kind of a thing. I just sort of be more focused on the cause. Why am I doing it? You know, am I doing it to be better than men? No, definitely not. I'm doing it for the next generation. So I think the moment I shift the focus of why am I doing it, it sort of gave me a purpose to do it. So I'm no longer even worried about male athletes getting more support than women. And I'm just fortunate that in my team, I'm actually surrounded by women. I found it's women who gave me an opportunity to become, you know, the best athlete that I am today. So with that, for me, it's enough.
You know, we've had these conversations where we say, you know, sometimes we find that it's not even, you know, the men blocking us. It's sometimes our very own. And I mean, your experience, you know, is different, obviously. But that's not necessarily the case, you know, in other sectors where we've seen where other women would actively want to block, whether it is someone who's coming into the game or trying to develop themselves, and there's a pushback. And I suppose it goes to, it was so difficult for me to get in. So let's take a short break. We'll be back with the roundtable after this. Do stay with us. Right, welcome back. This is Imbokodo Women's Roundtable, and I am with my guests, Michelle Bradshaw, Kotatso KG Monjani, Lebumtswedi Lynette Francis, as well as Ria Ledwaba. Let's talk about this issue of pay gap, but on the back of, you know, the legal way of looking at it. So we need to ask, who's making these laws? And I think you raised an interesting point. Are there even laws? And who is responsible for enacting them? Because it also seems that these decisions are made arbitrarily when it comes to how we, you know, women are paid. I think you can take it, Lebu, about this pay issue, because it's been a big one, and especially in broadcast.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I'll keep it short, but the point is, it's that your pay and your salary is discussed over a lunch, over brunch. I'm not legally protected by anyone because I'm an independent contractor and a freelancer. So therefore, Flo is allowed to say, okay, Lebu, I think you're worth 10 Rand. And I can say, no, but I have experience with 20 years. Yes, but we still think you with 10 Rand.
And what is it based on? What is it based on? Because I also find it quite ironic that women have more responsibilities. Let's also just be factual about it.
Stems from this, like, man is the breadwinner.
Yes.
And that it's so dated. It's such a dated concept.
Exactly.
There were so many single mothers, and that we have all the responsibilities. And what is this? Also this idea that men generate more income. You know, I think in sports it's a big one. That's not my field certainly, but I know that, you know, men apparently generate more income, and therefore they'll get paid more. You know, is this the truth, and what do we do? What is the solution to balance that out? And
let's talk about that. Do men generate more income? I mean, is that and how and why? Why is that the case? I mean, I'm looking at Banyana, for example, who are playing better. They're qualifying for more. Correct me if I'm wrong.
They're not getting half.
Yes. So what's the problem?
You play 90 minutes.
Same referees.
But why is it? Why do they generate more? Or is it our fault? Is it that there's more interest when it's, you know, men on the field?
But I think in sports, I think it should be regulated. You know, it should be regulated. The reason why we have SASCO, for example, as the main custodian of sports in the country in terms of the policy of government, they should be regulating that to see that all sporting federations that are there, they are regulated in terms of salaries, how they remunerate.
So it's not arbitrary.
Yes, but then if they leave it to federations, then it's a problem, because then it depends on what sponsors. In soccer, they will tell you the sponsor that we got, it's Bafana sponsor. It's not a Banyana sponsor.
Correct.
But do we have a marketing company that goes out there to the product that we use as women every day and get those sponsors for Banyana? Do we get those kind of platforms where women can be able to do that?
KG, I know you said that you don't necessarily focus on the sponsorship aspects and the money aspect of it, but it's important to kind of look at the level of treatment, you know, when you're a man and when you're a woman, for the next generation. I mean, I'm sure you do concern yourself and you worry yourself about the generation that's coming after you, those tennis players who would want to, you know, be playing on the competitive level that you've been able to get to. That we don't want to have, you know, I think we said this, we don't want to be having these conversations 20 years from now where we're still fighting about pay gaps. Does that not, you know, concern you to a certain degree?
Yeah, actually, I was just about to say, like, it's like I'm more on the positive side of things today with what women do, because when you look at tennis, back in the days, Billie Jean King, together with the other 9 players, they pushed this whole narrative of the same pay. And today, tennis players get paid the same, as long as they're playing in those tournaments where it's mixed with men. They are being paid.
There's a question in the issue of the sponsors. Who's interested in you?
For me, it just comes down to us. Like as women, sometimes we shouldn't follow the narrative. Like she was saying, she got into the job. She was she's a journalist. She has all the experience. So why not, with all the experience that we have, try to surpass whatever that is being limited on you?
Yeah.
So for me, I'm all about, as women, we know what we can do. Why do we have to listen to the whole stereotype, the narratives of what women can do, women can't do? What is it that we can do? So why can't we go on our own and try see if we can do it? You know, the more you keep making noise, at some point it really changes.
I want to talk about this making noise because I'll say, you know, from my experience, and I'm sure it's your experience too, where the moment you start to raise your voice about, but why is the pay like this? Keep quiet. But you know, how do you even begin to raise?
Firstly, let's just say that this allotted time is not enough to discuss this issue.
Even in my ear now, I'm being counted down.
I understand that. But the reality check is the World Economic Forum did a survey in 144 countries around the world. And they found, and particularly with reference to South Africa, that men were earning at that time, I think it's either, correct me if I'm wrong, 2015 or 2017. They found that men were earning 6,600 Rand more than their female counterparts, same job, but earning 6,600. They estimated, they projected that it will take us as the world, 99.5 to 135.5 years. So I share your optimism. I share your hope, because I want that too. We want a better generation to have our girl children to have better opportunities.
On the table who's saying, you know, actually it's kind of okay.
But the reality is that at this point in time and in the foreseeable future, we don't, as a collective, we're not strong enough. We don't have a strong enough voice to enforce change. We need to speak to that. We need to challenge it. We do need to make a noise. And not only when it is 16 days of activism, or not only when suddenly Ria is eventually the president of SAFA. Not then. It needs to happen now. But we cannot do it in opposition to men. We do need men as our allies.
That's it.
But we don't. It's the way we position ourselves. And we are the change we want to see in the world.
I actually want to talk to Ria, the SAFA issue. Are we still battling with that, where we're finding that men are very happy to keep status quo? Or are you finding that throughout the years, in your time in soccer, that, you know, perceptions are changing, that we are starting to see, I mean, you did get some votes. I mean, let's not pretend as though, you know, it was completely, you know, exactly. But do you find that perceptions are changing, and that at some point we will indeed see a woman SAFA president?
I think so. I think it's an issue of fear. You know, I must say the regional president that I've spoken to really were supporting, and they were saying, look, we would want to see change, but this fear that has been instilled in people.
The fear, what is that fear? Fear of what? That you won't be able to, that you won't, what is the fear? What is it driven by?
Get grants. You know, it's like when a player starts talking about salary in a camp, and then the next camp you're not there. They just drop you.
Why?
You know, it's just like that. So I'm saying, for me, the experience, although I didn't have an opportunity to meet all the presidents of the region, but the ones that I've met, even to nominate, they were actually asking me, Ria, can we not nominate you, but we'll vote for you?
Why must you be covert?
But it is the victimization. You know, people are so victimized that they cannot do any other thing except to avoid this victimization.
If they voted for you, they would not their position.
That's it.
I am telling you, there are two regions that were not allowed. The one was, they were just moved out of the and it's the region that actually nominated me. They were not there to vote for me. The other region, because they were very vocal that we want change, they were just got a letter, you are not in compliance, you can't come to the Congress.
Yeah.
So there was just so many things. That's why I keep on saying, and people must understand, it's not just about accepting the results. I am not even sure if those results are what is in that box. I do not know that, because you can't go to an election where 5 people are voting, but the results give you 9 votes. We need to stand up, and not only us that are in those organizations, women out there, because they see this victimization, they see this abuse out there, South Africans.
Yeah,
and
because
you
you
are saying out there,
you can't be the lone voice.
You can't be the lone voice.
In SAFA, you know?
Some of us who have been the lone voice for how many years? You, at some point, you know, my children were saying to me,
Mama, the minute I support Mamria now, as a broadcaster, I will not be where I am.
Hence, I gave the disclaimer. I gave the disclaimer to say I hope it's not controversial to say.
Because immediately I support her on a national platform. I'll get a message, an SMS. Why were you supporting Ria? And then where am I? MIA in football.
You know, I had to make that decision early in my career that not to go to political meetings or have coffee or teas because anybody can then question your independence. So if I do, and I'm very interested in politics.
But also, who are you having a relationship with? Why are you?
You know,
that question.
Because that's not going to be relevant. Or, no, but I could see you were leaning towards that. Or why is...
Even your questioning.
Even your questioning. But the thing is, the reality is, men don't have to watch themselves like we do.
Let's take a short break. We'll be back with the Roundtable after this. Welcome back to Imbokodo Women's Roundtable, and we're continuing with our conversations with my guests, Michelle Kgothatso, Lebu Lynette, as well as Ria. And of course, we were unpacking just before the break, you know, the issue of having to be outspoken and talk about our problems, the fact that we want change. How do we even start? Yes, the onus on us to speak, but how? I think now we're doing, this is solution-based now. I think we're done with our rant. Let's do our solutions.
I also don't want to create the impression that we are male bashing. In terms of change and speaking up, for myself, I've always said, I'm often the only voice there. And if I walk away from that opportunity or that opportunity to talk or say something, am I going to remain silent? I want to be able to walk away knowing I can live with myself, I can live with my conscience, and I can live before my God. And that is my motto. Oftentimes you do sit around tables where you are the only woman, and then you happen to be the only woman of color, and they assume you're there because you're someone's partner, PE partner, and don't even make eye contact with you, Michelle. They ignore you until you kind of make yourself heard. And we all do that in different ways. Some of us do have to be visible. Some of us do have to speak up. And for me, once I've done that, if you don't want to listen to me, it's okay. When the opportunity is there, use it. Because you don't want to go home with regrets thinking, why didn't I?
Michelle, you know, in your industry, yes, teacher. But you know, how do you feel though about this, the burden? It's an added burden on onus to speak out.
I like to maybe not use the word burden. And I think what I wanted to mention is that we do have a tool at hand. I know you write as well, and obviously you've just written a book. So, and I think that script writing and storytellers, that's who we are by nature, isn't it? That's human nature to tell stories. So if you're not necessarily what would be called aggressive or very vocal, write your stories. You know that 15% of scriptwriters in the world, apparently this is a figure, don't quote me, are women. We don't need equipment, you don't need a computer, you don't need any tools. Write your story. And that's how we can change the narrative. Because what's happening now is we're perpetuating the narrative with men telling the stories and movies written by men. We still have those bold male characters, or this is how it is and this is how women are. And that is a beautiful tool that we have at hand.
Yeah.
You know?
KG, let's talk about how you believe you know, in where you are, you were able to get it right.
Look, I can't say I got it right, but, you know, for the mere fact that I'm an athlete and an individual sport, so I had to make a lot of decisions that affect my life in general. So that's where I think I get it right, because as much as I've got a federation above me, but they don't run my life. They don't make decision on what I need to do, you know. So I think that's where I got it right. That's why I believe as women, if we keep talking or if we keep making noise, someone somewhere will listen and there will be change, because I think that's what I did during all the struggles that I had. I mean, I used to not have sponsors, and I just kept saying it. When people be like, but why are you number one? And I was like, I don't have sponsors. Someone somewhere listened, and there's a change. So why can't I believe in that narrative?
So it does help to speak out.
Yes.
We need to.
As much as we feel like we are poor, immediately when we raise our issues, we are being pushed back. Don't be scared to be pushed back, because when you are pushed back, another opportunity will come up. As long as you keep, you know, raising relevant issues, someone somewhere will hear you.
He's speaking, it's right. It's the right thing to do. We need to speak about our challenges. We need to continue to speak. Whether women or men like it, we must continue to speak. But it must come to a point where there must be a solution. There must be somewhere where we are not sitting around the table and talk about challenges. How do we resolve this pay gap? You know, and have solutions, and those solutions must be implemented. Like I said before we came here, there are many decisions that are made in those boards. I know in my board there were many decisions that were made that were never implemented. And I'm saying, who are supposed to monitor that what she's doing there, she has said something, the public are there, they also need to raise their voice. I don't believe on our own we can be able to raise these issues and win. We have listeners. I've seen it now. I heard South Africans speaking, you know, because I raised issues that they were doubting. Now they're hearing them from me.
Exactly what Kechi was saying.
And people start saying, no, but it can't be right. It can. So, but South Africans, we need to stand up for issues that we want to see in our life. We spoke about the age issue before we came here. And say, why is it there's a policy of 60 people retire? But why are the other people going to 90?
We won't mention names.
Why can't we all retire at 60? It must be a policy that applies to each and every industry, even parliament.
But you raise a very important issue, in that it's very easy to get rid of someone who's complaining or who's talking and who's raising very pertinent issues. So maybe that's where we need to figure out where we start to, how do we fight the good fight?
I think because we are individuals, a lot of, so KG is an individual athlete versus a team like Banyana. The minute you raise something in a Banyana camp, you might be sidelined. She's an individual. She has the ability to make noise. I hear it, I put it on a certain platform. So it's, the onus is on me as a broadcaster to be intentional about who I put on this platform to speak their needs. So I need to be intentional about, okay, we're going to speak to a volleyball team now. They have issues of gender-based violence. Netball team, 1 or 2 athletes were treated this way. They need to be on this platform. We cannot only speak to people that are very high level, they're doing well, it's airy-fairy. We need to give the platform to those that have issues and be intentional and be positive about how we disseminate that information. I think for me that's the first.
It's one thing, and we've seen with whistleblowers in South Africa as well. It's one thing to speak up, to have the power of your conviction to say something, but when we have to have mechanisms in place to protect those voices, those courageous voices, willing to make waves,
but the moment you raise your voice, you become, you know, a problem. Now everyone pretends that they don't know you.
For change to be there, there has to be who will be sacrificed. You know, and that's the change we need.
Okay, we're going to take a short break, and we're still talking solutions after this. Do stay with us. Welcome back. The last part of the roundtable, the Imbokodo Women's Roundtable. Thanks very much for staying with us. KG, you left us on quite a, I don't even know what to say, a depressing note maybe, but it's still talking to the issue of a solution. You said, you know, at the end of the day, there has to be what I'll call the sacrificial lambs. There are those who would have to speak out, and those are the ones that are creating a better path for those going forward. And I'd really like us to talk to that, the idea of being comfortable with, you know what, if it means that I must then lose this opportunity, but I'm fighting, you know, for a bigger cause. Do you really believe that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously as an athlete, we've got this thing in sports psychology where you like, I'm uncomfortably feeling comfortable, you know? When you have injuries or you just like under a lot of pressure, stress, you get to a point whereby you have to tell yourself that, you know, I'm feeling so uncomfortable, but I have to be comfortable, you know, for me to be able to go out there and perform. So which I feel like that's the situation that as women we are in. We are so uncomfortable with a lot of issues, but we have to be comfortable to be able to deal with those issues. So we need to be brave, you know what I'm saying? So some people will be sacrificed, but in that point of being sacrificed, the issue is those issues that you are being sacrificed for, they need to be resolved so that the next generation doesn't have to deal with that.
It's a realization that I had a long time ago, that I had to accept that I'm often going to be the only woman there and the only woman of color, particularly because in an Afrikaans environment, there were also typical stereotypes that had to be challenged. And who are you to come and question us, or you get accused that, oh, you've got a chip on your shoulder, and you're conscious of that all the time, and that you have to speak and carry yourself consistently with the same message in mind, that it's not just for us. And, you know, while you were talking about these sacrificial lambs, I thought to myself, if the women of South Africa's Women's March, when they were having this meeting deciding to march, if they had thought, Lord Almighty, there's never going to be any hope. We can't wait for 135 years. We need to do this. If it means we're going to face police, if it means we're going to face imprisonment, we got to do it because somebody has to do it.
Exactly.
That's going forward. And we're talking about solutions, and the wonderful thing for me is that there are questions right now. Some countries are asking for legislation, for pay transparency, that companies should commit to saying this is what they earn, and they have to reply with reports. And we should not lose faith. We should not lose hope. And yes, it's important to have the reality checks, but if we're just going to sit back and wait for someone else to do it, it's never going to be done.
I mean, Michelle, do you have that awareness? Do you sit there with that awareness that, you know, at the end of the day, whatever is bad that's happening to me, I need to make sure that going forward, this is not happening to other... Do you have that?
That, 100%. And it is a struggle. It is a little difficult to be the lamb and, you know, to walk away from opportunities because of the unfairness and what have you. But one has to make that decision. It's like you were saying, you've got to be authentic about it and say, I'm not going to be maltreated in this way. I'm not going to, you know, this is unjust, and I won't tolerate this injustice. But it takes, you know, it takes a lot of fight and to do that. And I think it also goes back to women standing together, not without men, like you mentioned. I think that is imperative to talk about, that we need the support of men to push us.
Mate, you're now basically the lamb, if you look at it. Because at the end of the day, at the end of the day, I think I am positive about the fact that at some point we will have a female SAFA president. And unfortunately, even though you've traveled this route, it might not even be you, and it's something that you have to accept.
But I want to touch on what she said about writing our stories. You know, yes, and I agree with you. That's why I'm writing a story about my struggle. I'm not talking about football. I'm talking, I want people to read that book to see that women have got the capacity to change things if they speak out, you know, and yes, your voice and all that. But I still have a problem with what I said at the beginning, that I don't know whether I should say black people, you know, we do not read. you know. So you write a story, people have to read it. So if we can't read, we are not going to be able to achieve what you want.
We need to make a film of
audio, and that's what you're saying.
This medium.
I'm just, you know, it's so interesting that we're talking about maybe we will still in our lifetime see that we'll have a president of SAFA in soccer. People, in our lifetime, might we even consider the possibility of having a woman as president of
South Africa? I'm not laughing because I want you to give me the options now.
Yeah. But it's actually unfortunate that we now have to think that this is maybe after us. You know, I mean, I all my life had...
No, it should be the likes of you.
I thought at some point that,
your voice is powerful. Your voice is powerful.
I thought at some point we'll have a female president. I didn't even think I'd have to wait till I'm approaching my 40s. That means that I might not actually see a female president.
What she says about policies, it's important. I can tell you, the reason why at SAFA you had a vice president, it was a debate of more than 5 hours where we were fighting that if this position is not in the Constitution, it will never happen. And I still believe if it wasn't in the Constitution, it was not going to happen. SASCOC, for example, they've got a 50-50 representation of board members. They must do it to all the federation. We don't have to sit here and talk about it. Because if it's endorsed and say each and every federation must endorse that in their constitution, it's done. Simple as that. So what are they still waiting for? They should be giving them time frames and say by 2024,
this is what we need to see.
All federation must have all federation salary gap must be done with. It's done.
Let's talk about moving forward. I mean, we can't not be hopeful. Yes, we are addressing the fact that you scared us with your stats, but let's not be despondent. Let's not have hopelessness.
And
I think maybe that's where we'll wrap it up.
My one solution when it comes to sports broadcasting, looking at the SABC as the South African host broadcast, every single sports reporter that you have on all your radio stations, your PBSs as well, in their bulletins, they must carry a woman in sports story. That's the policy I would love to see.
I agree.
That's it. That's a start.
Raising consciousness and awareness.
Every single. So that means that
broadcast must play a role in this.
Yes, because it becomes a norm. We do influence. Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And we must also openly support Ria.
Please let me support you.
Shonda Rhimes at an awards evening said they gave her this an award for her work, and she said, "Thank you very much for the award. I deserve it."
Yes.
But it's the truth.
Yes.
Why can't she own her hard work?
Yes.
You know you're good at what you do.
To be called arrogant, you know this.
But it is what it is. We should live in our truth. We should take up space. We shouldn't allow others to say, "You allowed here." No.
I'm here.
I'm here.
I must say you deserve it. You must know you deserve
I
it.
know so. Like competition. I know so.
Well, ladies, thank you so very much. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I wish we could add another hour to go. But thank you for being with us here on SABC. We certainly do appreciate it. We appreciate your time and your input. And I hope that these conversations go somewhere, that it's not just us sitting at a table and having the conversation, but that people watch. And as you said, when someone sees, maybe there's a change here and there's movement there. So I'd like to thank my guests today, Lebo Motsuedi, Lynette Francis, Ria Letwaba, Kotatso Monchane, as well as Michelle Brescio. Thank you all so very much for giving us your time. Well, that's it from the Imbokodo Women's Roundtable. So the woman that I had here, vibrant, and we've had a lot to say. A woman in arts and broadcast as well as sport. Thanks so much for tuning in. Cheerio.